Welcome to episode 13. This is Ibrahim Diallo, and I hope you've been enjoying the previous episodes. If this is your first time, please go back to the first one, or second, third, anything else, so you can have a good idea of what is happening here. Today, we're going to be exploring more of the admin. We're going to also set up some Apache configuration files to make our application independent of the computer where it's going to be hosted. We're going to have like different settings for our development machine or production, or if we also have a staging server, we can have those settings there. So we're going to do like a quick setup of that, and then we're going to get back to the admin and do more CSS and also make sure that we can edit articles. All right, sit tight and enjoy. Back to my Linux machine and our pretty website. There's one thing I haven't done in the previous videos, that is to set up our website for to prepare it for when it's going to be deployed on a server, because right now it just works on this machine, and I thought it would be a good idea to have a way to set it up to work correctly on our dev machine and also on a production machine. That's something I do on my own projects. I haven't done this for this particular project, this blog yet, but this is a perfect opportunity. So what I'm doing here is I'm starting to set up Apache config files that will be tied to our framework, because if you remember on the previous videos, I had it only under that etc, then Apache sites available. Right now I'm gonna make it part of our framework. I mean, part of our application basically, because it should come as a whole package. Here I'm just setting up like a specific place where all our error logs will be, or access logs, or anything particular to this to our application. And for this particular version is going to be the developer version. We'll be able to also add a production version, for example, so that way when we deploy our server, we don't need to set up anything. We already know how our server is set up. Like, we do it once in the code, and then after that, deploying is just a matter of updating the code, and it automatically sets up correctly. There's also some things like I use on my own website, for example, for redirect rules. I have a file in there because, every once in a while I've noticed that some of my URLs don't make sense. So I wanted to redirect to a new place or just to a different article. For example, there was an article I wrote in 2 parts, and then one day I decided to just combine it into 1 part. I just went in my redirect rules and said that if the user uses one, go to the second installment to automatically get redirected to the first one, because they're all the same now. And that's a good way also to let search engines know that you've made the update, so they don't point back to the old article anymore. Yeah. Anyway, these are default Apache config logs, that Apache config files that I promised earlier that I was going to share, but I didn't until now. Actually, I had just forgotten until now, and I think this is going to be very useful to us. And also, I take advantage of this to pass some environment variables. For example, on our development machine, we want to see errors. On the production machines, we don't want to see errors. So this is a way I can also set this up to make sure that we don't have to write an if or a condition, some weird things like that, to check if it's if it's our staging server or if it's our our production server. Yeah. Anyway, I made the code point to I made the old Apache config file to point to our new one that we just created right now. On the development machine is going to be this particular file, the devserver.conf, and on production I'll have prod.server.conf, and also I'll have the other file that I just created, constants.php, and we'll also have prod constant.php. This is the variable I created that's going to be under server. It's going to be some server, and then I just called it simply var. I copied that from my other framework because I decided to call it simply. And yeah, for example, we can show analytics. If you're on your local dev, we make sure that you don't have Google Analytics running on it. Or if you're in production, you want to make sure that you have your CDN running instead of your local files. So all these are things that are useful to set up to make sure your website works properly on different environments. So let's say I was to give access to another developer to work on my on this website, they don't need to go and configure their own .conf file. They can just use the point directly to this file, and then they're set. Anyway, it's just a nice thing to have in there. It definitely makes our work easier. We are not going to focus too much on the production part yet because we haven't hosted it on any server. I just made let's call it a placeholder for now. Maybe when we deploy, we'll see like some more things that we want to add. But anyway, for now, this is perfect. And that's it, I think. I'm just gonna... Wait, did I test? I probably tested it already. Anyway. Yeah, these are just little synthetic, little things that I want to update in there. Just make that logo clickable and nothing special, really. Make sure that my URLs are generated using our framework so we don't have to hard code anything. Yeah. If you take the time to look at the whole framework, we've went a long way. We have a fully functioning website now, while in the beginning we were just trying to get like the basic. Today we have everything working, and we even have the admin that's starting to take shape. Today we're going to focus on that a little more. I'm going to start by adding more CSS to that to make it look prettier, because I mean, it's not just making it prettier, but it makes it easier to work with. Like when you have everything crammed together, it's much harder to work on, and sometimes it's just not pleasant to look. Anyway, I'm gonna use it. I think I'm using a table for this already. I can just add a class name and then style it appropriately. As you can see, I use CSS, HTML, and PHP a lot. I just don't focus on one. I don't take some time and say, okay, right now I'm just going to focus on CSS or just on PHP. I move around because, at least for me, I have trouble doing just one thing, because when I do something for too long, sometimes, I get to a point where it becomes hard. Like I have a problem to solve, and if I can solve the problem, but if I spend too much time on it, I will just end up being tired at the end. I might finish the task, but it'll probably take me like an hour, and after that I don't want to do anything else. While if I just did a little bit of it, and then when I'm stuck I just let it go to the next one, I might end up doing a lot more things. I can get like big parts of the CSS done, some part of the HTML done, and the PHP also. It just makes my life easier. If I just focus on one thing, I would have taken much more time. Like after I'm done, let's say with the PHP only, I will just give up. Anyway, as you can see here, I forgot how some rules are done in PHP, in CSS, and I just wanted to select all the like even or odd table rows, and I forgot how to do that. And hey, I don't have to memorize it. I just go on Google, type, whatever rule I want with CSS, and then I get what I need. And I love putting like weird colors first so it looks awful, and I have no choice but to change it, to update it right away. Yeah, anyway. This is a cool thing about our field, and at least in web programming, or programming as in general. You don't have to memorize everything. All the things you do in those interviews, in reality, when you're in the job, you don't have to memorize them. When you're stuck, all you gotta do is go and Google it. That's it. Like, that's why I don't like those puzzle questions they ask in interviews, because, if I was in the job and I stumble upon something like that, I would probably try to find an answer online. Like, first I'll try to do it. If it's not obvious, I'll try to find a solution elsewhere. And if I don't find the solution elsewhere, maybe I'll start focusing on it entirely. Like, try to solve the problem myself. But what's the point solving a problem that's been already solved? Like, how many golf balls you can fill a car with? That doesn't make any sense. First of all, why would you fill a car with golf balls? I mean, you gotta be an idiot to do that. But anyway, that's out of the subject. Anyway, what am I doing here? Yeah, I'm editing just formatting things properly, adding extra some more HTML just to separate things properly. And also, I'm gonna start working on a form because you can see I'm on the edit page right now. I want to create forms like a form style that's gonna be used everywhere. I don't want it to. It's not gonna be limited to this page. Any pages that where I'm gonna be using forms, I'm gonna use the same formatting, like basically giving it the same classes, and so that way it looks okay right away. I don't have to style it again, and yeah. It's at least on my side, these things are the most annoying things. I don't like every website you do, you're gonna have to eventually work on forms and styling some things, like doing validation. To me, that's the most annoying part. Not because it's hard, because it's too easy, and well, it's also too easy to make a mistake. Sometimes you just forget like a single character somewhere, you make a mistake, or your logic is not correct. But every website you do, you have to redo the same thing because every form name has, like, well, they're all named differently and so on. It becomes annoying at some point. But you know what? You got to do it eventually. So better get to it. There are some solutions to that. Like, at least when I was using Symfony, the PHP framework, they have some things, like something to automate forms. But to tell the truth, for me, it was much harder to set up than to actually just use it. I mean, sure, it does automatic validation, but you have to set these things up. It's automatic. Actually, I don't think it's automatic at all, because you have, instead of working with forms, you're just doing forms in PHP, and it's actually much more complicated. So I don't really know why. When I was working with it before, because I was in a company, and they insisted that we use them, even though sometimes it didn't make a lot of sense, or the rules were too complicated because you have to tie it with the database field name, and yeah, I mean, it sounds nice, but once implemented, it's a lot of work. Like, sometimes there's some very simple things we had to do, but we didn't know how to do it with the framework, so we had to go and Google it, and like, everybody suggests to do it one way on Stack Overflow, but that doesn't work for you because you have that little edge case. It just doesn't work. So you have to do some sort of hack, or sometimes you, like, all the form data is follow the rules except one particular field where you have to do a special condition for that particular field, and yeah, it becomes a hack at the end. If you ever have to update, yeah, it becomes a mess. But anyway, forms is still good. You still have to validate. Just do your validation. I mean, for this particular form, I'm gonna do just tiny little bit of validation, but yeah, you could use something more robust. But you have to remember, for now, we have, like, our articles are very simple. We have title, URL, content, and date added, date published. I didn't even really do anything for the date added and date published right now, but hopefully in the next video, I'm gonna add that. We're gonna be able to modify the publishing date. That way, an article only appears once it's published and not before. CSS is pretty easy. I mean, it's hard to get started, but once you get a good gist of it, it's not so complicated. As long as you don't do a lot of crazy nesting. As you can notice, if you notice my CSS, I don't do any nesting at all. I mean, I do very little. Let's call it that. I do very little nesting, because the more nesting you do, the more your styles cascade into each other, and the harder it becomes, and yeah, you don't, once you get to that point, it becomes complicated. So anything you do, try to organize it. If you organize it, it'll look good at the end, and it'll be easier to maintain. Here, I'm just trying to create a green button for the save in the bottom, and I copied the code, the CSS, from the logout button on the top, and just made it green. There, looks good. I think that's fine. There you go. Our editing part looks fine now. Our adding articles will look exactly the same. It will just be empty when you start. That's it, really. And let me see. I guess the next thing to do is to save those articles. Once you edit it, you want to save it. And, as usual, I write the code before I implement it. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get the request object, which will allow me to get all the parameters. It's going to, the form is going to send itself, it's going to send the data back to the same page. All we're going to do is check if the request is a post request, then we save it. So here's what I'm doing here. Since the request object has a method called get method will say get, post, or whatever else that's out there. And if it's a post, we're going to save the data. We're going to pass it the ID and the request object. And it can do whatever it wants in there. We don't care. All we care about is that it brings us back a status to say whether it worked or not, and that's it really. And yeah, I'm going to pass on the URL, just a status also. Just to say failed or success. That's it. That's going to be useful at some point. Like we can pass that inside our HTML. If it's failed, just display failed. Or, I'm not going to do give all the errors yet on this particular example, but that would be a good idea. We can just give the results. And if you notice there, I have it once, if it's a success, if it passed, just to redirect the page. The reason I do this is because sometimes when you're on a form and you press F5, it's going to resubmit the data. So if I take the data, save it, then redirect, it's not going to, when I press F5, it's going to reopen the same page without resending the data. So that's the reason I put that in there. I forgot the name of that method, how they call it. Save and redirect or whatever. There's a term for it. As you can see, I'm not really familiar with terms. I just program and, make things work. That's it. All right, now it's a good time to actually write that method to save the data. And, PHP have this feature now where you can pass the actual data type. I'm not going to be using it here exactly, but that could have been a place where I can use it. Like the request object, I can just say that the second parameter has to be a request object, otherwise it'll throw an error. But later, not right now. Right now I just want to make to be able to save this data. And of course I have no idea how to do it. Here's the thing, when I was trying to do this, I started thinking about a problem, about something I forgot to do. Because you remember our simply query method, what it does is run a query, get the result, and, populate an object with it. And I also created a little method called execute query. It's done particularly for this case where we want to run a save or update, an insert or an update. But I didn't really finish implementing it. And now that's becoming a problem here. And also, I made a typo right here that I didn't notice. It's going to give me a hard time later. But anyway, at least I'm warning you. So here, sometimes, you start coding and on the fly, you're thinking of a way of doing things, even though it's like the worst way to do it. To you, it makes sense in your mind, okay? And at least to me, it made sense. I was going to create an array of values, pass it every single value that came from the URL, do some escaping and trimming or whatever that I have to do, and then create a for loop to go through each one of those and then save them in an array and then explode it back into the string. You see, even right now when I say it, it sounds ridiculous. But at the time, that's what I had in mind. Until now, until here, I realized, wait a minute, I don't need to do that. Why the hell am I doing this? I can just create the query directly. But it happens. Sometimes you're just an idiot. Yeah, I don't know why I was doing that. I'm going to remove it anyway. Also, I'm just going to do a very simple validation here to make sure that the parts that were passed are not empty. Make sure that the title is not empty, and what I wanted to do really is just to make sure that it's more than, 3 letters long, at least. The title, the URL also, because you can have a very simple URL. You can have a URL that's just one word, but yeah. You're gonna have to excuse me. This is the only place I found to record, and there's loud music playing outside. Oh well. Okay, so just a little bit of validation here. Make sure that all my fields are correct. And like I said before, I made a typo somewhere, so this is going to be throwing an error, and I realize that my validation is crap. Yeah, so that's all it's going to do really, just return failed if it fails. And if it's successful, it's just going to return success. And I'm not, like on the other part of the code, I'm not even going to be checking that. All I do is pass that in the URL, and maybe I can use JavaScript or something like that to make a big deal out of it, saying, hey, everything failed, or something like that. And that's when I started thinking again about that function, because I'm using simply query. Well, that's not going to cut it for this particular case, but oh well. I'm just going to try it, and then if it throws an error, then we will see what to do. The good thing to do is always make a backup, because, we never know. So I made a backup, made some changes, and then I'm going to save and see what happens. And it failed, of course. That is because of my the code I forgot to implement inside the DBMS. Oh, sorry. First I had some other problems also, because I copied and pasted this from my framework, and this made sense over there, or it made sense the day I wrote it. Today it made absolutely no sense, so I don't know why I had this piece of code here. So the only thing I can do is remove it. Yeah. At least that part is solved, and then now I have other problems again. Like I said, these are not errors. That's feedback. I think I made another typo inside my framework. Or no, that's not it. No. Oh, right, it's returning an error. So we'll fix that first. I want to make sure that all my fields are actually available. And once I'm going to do this test, you're going to see that content is empty. That is because it's misspelled. I put MAME instead of name. You saw me panic there for a second. All right. Looks like it's saving now, but it's still saying failed, I think. Let's see. What does it say? Okay, this works. It shows that all the data is there. When I refresh it, okay, I need to go now to the database and make the necessary changes. Create that execute query. And yeah, through the magic of editing, I did that really quick. Oh, no, I didn't do. Oh, well, there you go. Okay, it saves now, but there's still something not working. Let's see. Yeah, there's also a bunch of other problems, which I'll fix in the future. But the good thing though is I'm getting feedback. That's why I have all my errors showing, because as you can see here, it's saving correctly, but it's just still saying failed. There's errors in my code, and it's annoying. But like right here, I have a typo. It doesn't stop my code from working, but yeah, also a problem because of copy and pasting. No, sorry. Here I just typed that wrong. I forgot an S. Typed an S and that's it. Yep, that's it. Params. And yep, that's it. This part works. And also, I return the insert ID, but if you do an update, you're not getting an insert ID. So yeah, I can get rid of that for now. I'm going to leave a to-do there so I can come back and analyze that later. All right, I think it's working now. Not only it's saving, but it's saying success. All right, so I'm going to format all my text here and save it and see if it makes any difference. And it does. I'm going to, yeah. So one thing I can do is try to add an article. I didn't add that feature yet, but I'm just going to go into database and do a quick adding, and yeah. Just going to add that really quick and then try to edit it using the website, the admin section. Here, that's the one with no title. I'm going to just say number 4, and then I'm going to create a quick title and see how this works, if it's going to work. Well, this is just a test. I'm just going to try some content here and see. It would have been a good idea if I added some HTML to say that it's a paragraph. I completely forgot to do that. Maybe I'll do that off camera. And of course, I love adding images, even though I have some crappy images on my website, but I just do. And I'm sure you can hear some music in the back. Anyway, you know, some people, they like to put music for the whole apartment. I guess that's how they think. Okay, so let's test the website. I added this new article. There you go. This is a test article with an image, and it works. So we can now edit articles on our website. I know, it's very exciting. Well, yeah, we did it. That's it for today. We have our editing working. Next time we're going to add adding articles and hopefully do some more stuff. Alright, we're done for today. Thank you for watching. I hope you learned a few things here. We finished adding the functionality of editing. Next time we're going to add articles directly from our admin, and it's going to be amazing. Well, that's it for today. I hope to see you next time. Alright, bye.